Welcome to the Babies in Business Podcast. Join your hosts, Rachel and Avram Gonzalez, real-life parents and business partners. Each week on Babies in Business, Rachel and Avram create a space for entrepreneurial parents to find their own way. They'll dive into insights on topics like leadership, efficiency, self-awareness, budgeting, and human psychology as they nurture their family and build their business. Here's your hosts, Avram and Rachel.
Hey, we're recording on a weekend, which is pretty rare for us. We are in the middle of the 2025 Gonzalez spring break staycation. The nanny decided to take some time off, so Rachel and I made the same decision to say, well, maybe we don't do work while she's gone and do some house stuff.
Yeah. And we prepped work stuff in advance and all the different things that need to continue running while we're not working, us specifically. And it's been really nice to kind of be more present at home and with the boys for extended periods of time.
Yeah. And then, of course, we realized the podcast must go on.
Yeah. We didn't prep ahead of time for that.
Right.
But we had so many other things that we needed to get done in order to make this possible. We knew that we would be able to squeeze this in at some point.
Yeah, the stars aligned. Both boys are napping right now. Let's get to it. We've been having this discussion about what we've termed lifestyle creep. I think it might be a thing. My mind, what lifestyle creep is the phenomenon in which you upgrade some part of your life. Yes. And then you start to acquire a bunch of other things to match that new up level.
Right.
You've been listening to the podcast for a while. You know that we're pretty thrifty people.
Yeah.
You know, we spend things on the stuff that really matters to us, and then we always try to maximize everything else. And I think this conversation is sort of an examination of that. What happened in December that first made us realize lifestyle creep is a thing?
Well, we got a Nintendo Switch, and we had this TV that was very difficult to see when playing two-player on the TV. And it was hard when you opened the menus and, all the stuff. And we ended up buying a gigantic TV.
Gigantic TV. We're like, we got to play the shit out of this on a bigger TV. So even though we had like a 45 or 48 incher,
something like that,
it just was not big enough for our new little hobby.
Correct.
We went out and bought this giant TV. Then we had to mount it.
My brother came over and helped us mount it. When I say help, I mean did.
He did it.
He put it up.
He did the whole thing. Thanks, Walker. Yeah, he put that thing up there, and then there was, we really liked the nice controllers.
Yep.
So let's get the nice controllers. Well, and then, this comes with one game, but there's 2 or 3 that would be great to have, and then maybe another one, and maybe another one. So, the Nintendo Switch, which I think would have normally been all that initial stuff, like, I don't know, $500, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
We ended up buying like $1,000 TV, right? And this and that. And we were just laughing because that's just one example of lifestyle creep, and it is everywhere.
And it's like the unintended consequence of a choice that you have that then leads to other choices that sometimes you can feel obligated to make.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's the case. Also, it can be you purchase this thing and you are required to up level, literally. And in that case, it's a car. So if you buy a brand new sports car, you are going to pay a lot for insurance. That is an example of unintended consequences, unintended cost, and you just don't think about it.
No. We decided to finally record the episode because you were at the gym yesterday or something, and Lincoln and I were in the backyard, and we were washing down this piece of furniture that got hit pretty bad with the dust storm.
Yes.
And then, we're playing with the hose, and he's spraying the wall, and I was like, man, the stucco is like crazy dirty right now. So I take it, and I start kind of blasting the wall, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like having a really good time doing that, of course. So is Lincoln, right? And then I think, man, imagine if the house was even bigger. like how much longer I would have to do this, or I have to pay somebody to do it.
Right.
Either way, right? Either way you pay.
Right.
And it's like, well, if you want the bigger house, those are just some of the things that come with it.
Right. And they can be unintended because sometimes you get into that decision and you don't realize until after that all these other things come along. Not saying that necessarily those are the things that you're going to encounter as far as like, cleaning the outside of the house, stuff like that, but you just don't know what you'll find until you're there.
Yeah. Super interesting. This is going to sound really nerdy, and Rachel doesn't know I was going to share this, but I used to play this video game back in the day. It's called Warcraft 3. And no, listen. She's like, oh my God, Avram. No, but listen. So playing this game, as your army grew, your little minions would bring back less and less resources per trip. And they called it upkeep. So as your empire grew, it was harder and harder, basically, to maintain the same income, to maintain the same productivity within your kingdom, if you will. And I think that was just a interesting symbolic way of representing how you would run a business or a household. Businesses get to a certain point, bigger and bigger, the administration of the business grows, right?
Yeah.
The amount of money you have to put towards overhead and towards processes and positions you would have never had or needed at a smaller level.
Yeah.
Your household grows, you have more children, you go through different life events. Those things will change the size of your household.
And sometimes it's not, they don't stay the same amount as they multiply.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes less to take care of more when you spread it out, maybe, but then sometimes it might take more. You really don't know how it's going to level out. You really don't. So it's really very difficult to predict, but I recommend that you try.
I recommend you try. And I think that the place where we looked at this is like, well, so what's the useful part of this conversation? I think the useful part of the conversation is recognizing, and we talk about it a lot, the core values and what's important to you and your family, to you and your business. And you make sure that those things are prioritized. And if you have, quote, lifestyle creep in those areas, that's perfectly acceptable. That's an important part of your life.
Right. And with this choice of buying the television and buying the Nintendo Switch, all these different things, they were a conscious choice that we made. We didn't have to buy a bigger TV, but we understood what it did for us. So deciding, is this the thing that we want in our life and support that? I think it also applies in business where you can, like for us, we can have software creep.
Yeah.
So we can get one piece of software, but need more software to support this.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, now how many softwares do we pay for? And do we actually really use all of them? So we have had this conversation with financial stuff before, but it can also be in this way that it can be kind of that lifestyle creep, but keeping up and why.
And why?
So if it is serving your business and serving the bottom line and your clients better, then you're able to justify, quantify that kind of thing. But if it's not something that's actually really moving the needle, maybe you cut it.
Yeah, a lot of places you get in trouble. I mean, I spent a good chunk of my 20s wanting to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
You get a little bit more clear on your choices, I think, as you get older and find out what matters to you.
Yeah. So I love that there's this one thing that you introduced me to, My Rich Life. Is that what it was? Is that what it's called?
By Ramit Sethi.
Yeah.
Well, he talks about his rich life, and I think his book is I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
I just thought it was such a really cool perspective, and it is that there are no bad money choices.
Yep.
There are no right and wrong money choices in his way of saying, do what makes you feel like you have your rich life. What is it that you want in your life? If you want no responsibilities and you want to travel, well, maybe renting is the better choice.
Yeah.
If you love to have a garden and work in the yard, maybe owning is the way to go. There are different ways to look at it, and I loved that perspective.
Yeah.
That it's not about right or wrong. I mean, you may look at someone else's life and think, I wouldn't do it that way, but that's probably because you lean more towards something else of value.
Yeah.
So I loved that perspective.
Yeah, and I think it also helped when we watched his special on Netflix. That was your first introduction to him.
Yeah.
I had already read the book. I'd actually taught like a 6-week thing around the book with a group like 10 years ago. So I'd already known about his stuff, but I think what it did for us was when you watched it and we were together,
Yeah.
it's like, well, this helps us understand the importance of having a bit of clarity on what is important to us.
Absolutely.
And that it has to be a somewhat narrow list.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can't just spend your money on everything as if it's all equally important, because then what do you have? Nothing.
Exactly. And when you look back at it, you ask, well, what, like if you looked at your expenses, just a really quick way of maybe assessing, if you looked at your expenses, would you see what matters to you? And we've talked a little bit about this before with budgets.
We'll put it in the show notes, just a couple episodes we talked about this.
Yeah. If you're able to see what you value with what you're spending with both time and money, energy, that kind of thing, then awesome, you are living your rich life if that matches the values that you have. Yeah. But we've also talked about like aspirational values. Are you living your values? When you look and you do this quick audit, is it really what you'd like your values to be? Or are you more living in this is what I'm doing and I'd like to get there eventually, and make that plan.
Yeah. Fun conversation, always evolving.
Yep.
You know us, the Gonzaleses. Always thinking about it, always looking for ways to thrift it, always looking for a way to make it match more what we want to do and design our life.
And our boys and our family and our business, we have these goals and we want to support that with the things that we're doing, the decisions that we're making.
Yeah. Making more conscious choices.
Yeah.
So we've always got the show notes. If you haven't checked that out already, go to babiesandbiz.com/82. That's
Correct.
the episode we're recording today. You'll find mentions of previous episodes that relate to this topic. If you found it interesting, there's a bunch more on the podcast that you'll probably also enjoy. And if you haven't already left us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever it is that you're listening, we'd appreciate you doing that so others can see how impactful this podcast could be to their life as well. At the bottom of the show notes, just by the way, community question for you this week. Come interact with us. We've had some folks reaching out, sharing some things via, text message, smoke signals, email, all kinds of stuff. You can reach us at hello@babiesandbiz.com. But the community question this week is, what's something that you recently acquired that came with some unexpected cost? We'd love to hear about it. Ours was the Nintendo Switch. Can't wait to see what yours is. So you can go to babiesandbiz.com/82. Scroll to the bottom of the page. Leave us a note in the comments, and we'd love to hear it. With that said, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Babies in Business podcast. Who do you know that would benefit from hearing this episode? Share it with them and post about it on social media. You can find the show notes for this episode, free downloads, and connect with the rest of the community at babiesandbiz.com. We'll see you next time.